I know it's a crazy time. I know it's a crazy time, and in fact, that is what this theme of today is all about. But it's also an exciting and inspiring time. It's never been as exciting a time to start a new business and be part of an inclusive economic future for Canada. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge the lands on which we are meeting. As a national organization, Futurpreneur honors and acknowledges the traditional and ancestral territories of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people across the country. We recognize the diversity of Indigenous peoples and communities, including over 600 First Nations communities, 4 Inuit Nunangat regions comprising 53 Inuit communities, Métis nations, settlements, and regions, treaties 1 through 11, 25 modern treaties, and all unceded territories. As I am co-hosting this with Sandra from Toronto, Futurpreneur's national office, I do want to acknowledge that we are, this is a traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We are very fortunate to have a special guest today. Sandra Odendahl is the Senior Vice President and Head of Sustainability and Diversity at the BDC. Sandra will be moderating today's meaningful, timely discussion on starting a successful business in trying times, which as we mentioned, these certainly are. Today's panel features Futurpreneur and BDC supported young entrepreneurs who are building unique and innovative businesses. Wow, so innovative, such different sectors. Sandra, it's such a pleasure and honor to be here with you today. I have been lucky to have worked with you through several of each of our recent career chapters. And you have built on your experience to become one of Canada's trailblazers and leaders in the sustainable finance industry, which is fantastic for all of us, fantastic for Canadians, and amazing to see you in this new role, new-ish role, I guess, as SVP and Head of Sustainability and Diversity at BDC. I'd love for the audience to hear a little bit more about your experience and you in your own words. You could share.
Okay, well, sure, thank you. And so first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to join the session today. I'm really looking forward to hearing from and talking to the entrepreneurs and some audience discussion as well. So thanks again for including me. Sure, I'll tell you a little bit about my my career path and about me. So as you were saying, I'm currently Senior Vice President of Sustainability and Diversity, and I've been in that role at BDC for actually, I think it's 6 months next week.
Nice.
And I also oversee the bank's strategic partnerships with organizations that help BDC expand our reach, our impact, our knowledge. I joined BDC about 6 months ago from Scotiabank, where I led sustainability and social impact over there as the VP. And I was drawn to and enticed to join BDC mostly because of its mission. You know, it's a B Corp, it's a purpose-led organization, but it's also a bank, and its mission is to help Canadian economic growth and job creation by helping entrepreneurs grow and scale up their small and medium-sized businesses. So very cool to be working in a purpose-driven B Corp bank, and also it's a federal crown corporation. So what that means is that we have one shareholder, and that shareholder is you guys. It's all of us. It's the government of Canada. So when we do well, we all do well. So that also is a whole new nuance to this whole banking thing that I have got myself into. If I go back, just to indulge me to just talk a bit about career path, because I know there's a lot of young people on here. And one of the things that I learned is that a career often only makes sense when you look backwards, but going forward, it kind of looks, yeah, right? Like it kind of looks a bit random, but there's certainly, you can see threads through it. So for me, I literally started working in sustainability in graduate school, and that is the thread through my career. And the thread through my career is a curiosity about how do you balance and how do you solve for that tension between the need for economic development, the production of stuff, you know, goods and services, and the need to make sure that we are stewarding the environment properly and we're looking out for, you know, our communities, and that social issues are not on the back burner. So I started my career as an engineer. When I was doing my master's in chemical engineering, that's when I got interested in, well, and in fact, choosing to do a master's in the topic I did, which was looking at the emissions from bleaching bleached pulp and pulp mill wastewater, et cetera, et cetera. So that led me into a couple of years of working as an environmental and social impact assessment expert in the natural resource sector. And this is where that deep, that deep curiosity about how are we ever going to resolve that tension, and really it's a sustainability question. How do you balance economic, social, and environmental impacts and desires? And it's always a balancing act, and there's never one right answer, which is why it'll always remain an interesting discussion. So from the resource sector, I actually got recruited by RBC to be an analyst, a risk analyst for the natural resource sector. Nothing to do with environment initially. I didn't even think I'd stay in finance. It was just something cool to try. But I turned out I really enjoyed the work. I ended up getting a CFA, and I love numbers and data, and wrapping data around all this stuff was super cool. And I basically, that was more than 20 years ago, and that led me to staying, and as you said, being one of the first people, literally one of the very first people on Bay Street looking deeply into embedding environmental and social considerations into finance. And the one other little thing in there that was fun for me is I did a little stint of about 2.5 years where I was CEO of a carbon technology firm called Carbon Management Canada. And that was a fantastic experience for me, mid to late in my career, of learning what it's like to run a small business. So it was a 12-person company. I had to execute a turnaround strategy, revenue, ramp up, strategic, revamp, and really learned what it's like to be accountable for absolutely everything. Like one minute you're like figuring out how to get the dishwasher fixed, and the next minute you're like meeting with the minister of something, something. And so anybody who's in a small business is probably nodding their heads that you really need to be able to do everything, right? So that was a huge learning for me, and super growth experience, but also got me more interested than ever in how do we make innovative entrepreneurs and innovation companies, and even just regular companies on Main Street, sustainable, and supported. So here I am.
Which is excellent. And so actually, before we turn it over to the panelists, I'd love to ask you kind of a follow-up question about this chapter of your career and the way that the BDC and Futurpreneur work together. We have a successful track record of partnering to help diverse young entrepreneurs start and succeed, with a particular focus on our core values of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that it is inclusive. And you've mentioned the social side a few times. How does that play in? If you could speak a bit to BDC's mandate, how it aligns with our work that we're doing together to help diverse young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. So BDC is basically the bank for Canadian entrepreneurs, purpose driven. We don't do like retail lending, or we don't have, people come in off the street who want to open a bank account. We don't do that. We only work with small and medium-sized businesses. And so supporting small and medium-sized businesses is the way that we deliver value to Canada. Economic prosperity. When we were founded on, I guess, 78 years ago, it was all about economic stability for Canada, and economic growth and jobs. And now, in fact, we just had our new sustainability strategy approved by the board a couple of weeks ago. We're also, it's great. I mean, essentially it's about clean and inclusive prosperity.
Nice.
So, so in addition to my team looking out for sustainability and diversity, because I also oversee strategic partnerships, these are our partnerships with organizations like Futurpreneur that help us to deliver economic, social, and environmental impact in communities across Canada and among diverse community and individual groups. So with Futurpreneur, we've been partners, well, and Karen, you can correct me if I get any of this wrong, but I think it's 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a natural fit for us because our shared mission is to help business owners and people who want to be business owners start and scale up their businesses. And I mean, Futurpreneur plays such a critical role, not only with the much needed first loan that allows startups to get off the ground, but also the coaching and mentorship, which is really key in those early days. The thing with BDC as a bank is that we support and enable and we support and finance startups through our partners, but we would not be the bank to come to for somebody who has never done this before. This is where partners like Futurpreneur, who also provide that wraparound coaching, mentoring networks in partnership with us, can be, a killer combination with something like an organization like BDC. So one of the main components of our partnership is our joint financing program. So Futurpreneur provides up to Karen, is it 20 or 25,000?
It's 20, but we've talked about increasing it.
Okay.
So it's 20
I was looking
today.
at my notes last night and I was like, why do
Yeah,
I have
no,
25
we've
stuck in my
talked
head?
about,
Yeah.
Stay tuned, but no, it's 20, it's 20
It's 20.
today.
Yeah. So Futurpreneur will provide a loan of up to 20,000, and then BDC contributes additional capital of up to 40,000 at this time. And so the idea with it is that we want to support as many young business owners as possible. And then another thing that we've done together that's very aligned with BDC and certainly with the inclusive growth part of our mission, our corporate mission, is that BDC, RBC, and Futurpreneur recently launched a similar joint financing program that's focused specifically on further support for Black entrepreneurs. So this program enables Black entrepreneurs to access up to $100,000 in financing. So we have a very synergistic partnership, and I mean, certainly from our perspective, it's a really important part of our portfolio, not only of partnerships, but of financing tools and levers to reach as many Canadian entrepreneurs and business owners, small business owners as possible.
Yeah, it's honestly, it does make such a difference that we're able to band together to make it more money and more inclusive resources. It's great. I know our team's really excited to keep working with your team. I also know that my team is going to be really frustrated if we do not turn it over to the entrepreneurs, because that's who I know everyone wants to hear from. So this has been a pleasure, and I'll come back and maybe we'll have time for another quick chat at the end. But now I'm going to turn it over to you, Sandra. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And now thank you for moderating this panel on starting a successful business in trying times. So the e-podium is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. So again, yeah, it's really my pleasure to be here today. And yeah, thank you to everyone who's joined for joining to celebrate Small Business Week 2022. So we know starting a successful business in trying times is something that we really all want to solve for, and hence this session. So joining us today, we have 3 young entrepreneurs, and we've invited them to share their entrepreneurial journeys and to talk about how they're managing to run successful businesses during increasingly trying times. So I'm going to introduce them. You probably have does Karen or someone on the team, does everybody have printed information on the entrepreneurs? Was it in the program?
Team, I do believe it was in the program.
Okay, so I may not to read every word of this very accomplished group of young people, their bios, but I want to give you the highlights. So why don't I start with Louis Pallascio, founder of Studio Machiavel. So Louis has over a decade of video directing and marketing experience. And through this, he's built his brand around building the voices of those who aren't afraid to break the mold. So his company, Machiavel Studios, was started in 2018 as a catalyst for businesses to assume their, as he says, their black sheep nature and leave the herd behind. So Louis is a graduate of HEC in Montreal with a bachelor's in marketing, and he set out to acquire experience in both the creative world of agencies and the resourceful private sector before he ultimately focused that experience on his passion for video marketing. And his studio is based in the heart of Montreal. And from the studio, he hosts a podcast for the next generation of entrepreneurs, which is called Né pour un gros pain, which I think with my not great French translates to born for a big piece of bread, but that sounds like maybe I'm translating as an English person.
That's right. That's right. Exactly it.
Okay. So really, Louis and his business are aiming to change the entrepreneurial landscape, and we're going to hear about how that's happening. The next person I want to, welcome. And so the next person I want to introduce is Carolann Robyn Cruz, who's the founder of Taant. And I think that Carolann, Robyn, you go by Robyn.
I do.
Yes.
I do.
So Robyn is a little bit about Robyn. So she's an outdoor enthusiast and started to love camping as a kid. She was raised by a tight-knit Métis family of outdoorsy folks. And so when she started her own family, she really started to realize how fortunate she was to have been raised by nature lovers, because not everybody gets an opportunity to learn about nature, living outdoors, how great it is for your mental health, the benefits on your relationships with loved ones, etc. So working for small businesses throughout her entire professional career, she was able to use her financial, operation, and management skills when she started Taant. And we're going to hear about that shortly as well. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you.
And then last but not least is Nicola Hamilton. So Nicola is the founder of Issues. She's also an award-winning graphic designer and art director, and her work has been internationally recognized in the UK by DNAD, by the Society of Publication Designers in the US, and by the National Magazine Awards in Canada, among others. So she's currently the art director at both Best Health and Precedent magazines, and a part-time design educator at George Brown College. She's also the president of the Association of Registered Graphic Designers. So welcome, Nicola. Gosh, I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys. Okay, so one little housekeeping thing, well, maybe two. So there's a chat, and so you can, please, audience, put your questions, or other panelists, put your questions in the chat. There's going to be a few minutes for Q&A at the end. And then, of course, it goes without saying, and I think we're already there, but make sure you're on mute, because obviously having 100 people step off of mute could be very hectic for a panel session. But I think we're already on the road to having it the perfect setup. All right. I am going to start with Robyn, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Robyn, I guess to start with, I'm wondering, and I think the audience will be wondering, so what motivated you to start a business in a competitive market like camping and camping gear? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, basically, Taant is a mobile camping service. So if a camper goes in and sets up a campsite, they come to me and they rent the gear. So I drive out to the campground and I set up all the gear. I have all the gear and I set it all up. Nobody is doing anything quite like that in Manitoba. So I just wanted to make it inclusive for everyone. People who have physical restraints, they're lacking time and they don't have any time to prepare. So yeah, just things like that. Yeah, that's why I started it. A lot of people are bringing in RVs and bowlers and other campers, but nobody is bringing in a tent. And some people, some people want a tent. So that's where I come in.
And do you do this before they arrive, or do you?
I do.
Meet them? Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Boy, we'll talk later, because man, if I had somebody to do that, I might camp more. Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. And obviously it increases the number of people, hopefully, who feel comfortable getting out there and camping with their families or whatever.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I guess, same thing. I think we're all very curious about why all of you started your businesses. So I'm going to jump over to Nicola. Nicola, I mean, all we hear is about the print is dead. I mean, I have 2 teenage kids and they look at me like I have 2 heads when I insist on reading the Saturday newspaper in paper form, while lying on the couch with the fireplace on. Like, I think it's like divine. And they're like, why are you reading that big thing? What is that? Like, they think I'm crazy. But certainly we know that print is still a very important medium. So tell us a bit about you starting up your business in the print industry.
So as my bio states, I have been a magazine designer and art director, heavily involved in the design side of magazine land, both here in Canada and internationally, for about 10 years, which means that I am steeped in the independent magazine space. Independent magazines operate much more like small businesses than the big legacy titles that we're sort of used to seeing at the grocery store. And so they're fascinating. They're places that are taking big risks, both from a design perspective and from an editorial written perspective. And independent magazines specifically have always been a platform for marginalized communities and voices to tell their stories. So this thing still exists. And as a commercial art director, when I traveled, I would seek out magazine stores in other cities around the world that sold a lot of these magazines that I couldn't get my hands on here in Canada without paying bananas amounts of shipping costs. Oh, can everyone hear me okay? It says it's quite quiet. Okay. Cool. But so I would seek out these magazine stores elsewhere in the world and go and pick up some of my favorites. And they were some of my most prized conversations too, with the store owners or the other folks I would meet in those spaces. And we haven't had anything like that in Canada. So I'm based in Toronto, where we are very much a creative class city. A lot of our creative industries are based here in Toronto. We haven't had anything like it, places for folks to go and access these publications. So despite the sort of general consensus that print is dying, my belief is that it's changing. So we're moving away from what we've always known as printed magazines and towards something that's a little different. And that's what Issues offers.
Sounds like in addition to providing something that people need, eclectic selection of print magazines, you're actually creating a community.
Very much so.
Connecting a community.
Yeah, that's been a really
Awesome.
big part of what our sort of mandate is and what our long-term goals are about.
Nice. Louis, over to you. Or do you prefer Louis or Louis?
Well, technically it's Louis in French, but both work very well.
Okay, well, I'm going to call you Louis. So,
Perfect.
and the question for you is similar. So, I mean, for anyone who doesn't immediately know what video marketing is, maybe you can talk a little bit about why video marketing is important, but then also, why did you choose this niche for your business?
Absolutely. So firstly, because it's a passion. Video has been a passion since I was 12. So it became natural to go into that. My background is also in marketing. So I worked for a couple of years as a consultant in marketing and realized the importance of bringing those two together. And through time, I also realized how much of important medium video was, how there's no other medium that better communicates than video in advertising or just in communications in general. And there's no other medium that has as much growth as video has right now. We've seen examples like Instagram making the move, kind of copying TikTok in a way, and shifting completely towards video. That didn't last very long because maybe they were a bit too early in the process and they they scaled back on that, but it gives you an idea of how important it is. And I guess in a way, we're a bit similar to Nicola's issues, where we often get asked, you know, why did you gamble on video marketing, like choose to focus on with that as a business? And if everybody has a phone, it's super easy for everyone to make their own video. And it now, like your iPhone Pro can go like 4K RAW and do whatever you want. But we fundamentally believe that it's not so much the actual tool you'll use or the medium, but it's really the people behind it that push it, the creative minds that are putting out these videos. And you mentioned the black sheep earlier, and specifically the black sheep, so those who are not afraid to break the mold. We're trying to enable those people to put their voices out and shine. So it's really putting our creative minds together to make it happen. That's really important, even more so than just the actual camera rolling.
Great. So I think your passion was an important piece, but also you obviously saw there was a need for like high quality, well curated, well thought out video, not the crummy ones that I do on my iPhone. Absolutely. So that's really interesting thread I'm hearing, is a personal passion combined with recognition of a niche need in the marketplace, which obviously is really important to have those things overlap, right? So the next question that I want to put over to a couple of you anyway is about some of the challenges. So, maybe Robyn, I'll circle back to you. With your camping and outdoor focused business, are there some particular challenges you want to share that others can learn from around starting and or running a business over the last few years? Tell us a little bit about some of the challenges, and also if you want to talk about how you got around them or are getting around them.
Well, it started with the purchasing process. So I originally was going to purchase all my tents from the UK, but basically what happened was the import fees were outrageous. The delivery charges, everything was just so high priced. So I actually found a distributor in Alberta, and I was able to get everything, and the import fees were waived. And so that's the way I kind of worked around that. A lot of things were pretty expensive, all the gear for the interior of the tent, the mess kit, the bedding, everything. I chose to go locally. It was a bit more expensive, but I had the support of other outdoor enthusiasts to help me and get the best gear possible. So yeah, I just really relied heavily on their knowledge as well as mine. So yeah, those were basically the only real challenges I had, though, was the importing process. If you can find local, then it's just best to go local. Even if you are paying a bit more, it's supporting, your fellow entrepreneurs and building a stronger community.
Totally. That is so important. I love that. So procurement challenges, think about going local, even if it costs a bit more. It's almost a bit, you're also generating social purpose by, to your point, supporting other community entrepreneurs and companies. But I also think you raised another good point about addressing challenges by talking to other experts and not being afraid to take advice from wherever you can get it, right? That's
right.
That's a really, really important piece. Perhaps I certainly learned that in my brief stint as running a small business. So thank you for that insight. That's great. Yeah, I also, maybe Louis, do you want to talk about same kind of thing? Any challenges or situations and how you got around them?
Yeah, absolutely. Our challenges were mostly around, I guess, recruitment. Not necessarily so because of the labor shortage, so much as just in general, starting a business and building a team is quite hard. You don't necessarily have enormous cash flow, although the Futurpreneur and BDC loan helps a lot. It might not be the first thing you want to spend this influx of capital on.
Yeah.
So for us, our biggest challenge was to build a family spirit. And I know family is either has a very positive tone, or it can be a little, I mean, maybe it's too much thrown around when talking about a team or building a team of people around a business. But for us, it was very important for us to focus less on waiting to have necessarily everybody on the payroll, rather than we kind of skipped straight to building the team spirit. And we work a lot with consultants, basically, where we, depending on the project, work with them and we'll put the team together. So very early on, we build that spirit. We created weekly meetings, created like some events where we bring the whole team together, especially related to projects. So it wasn't that hard to do, where nobody really felt forced, because we had a project and we celebrated the project or beforehand. And I think that made a huge difference for us, because now when we go to clients and we propose projects, or they ask us to develop a script or a brief, we come as a team, and we know how we work together, even though officially on paper we're not yet officially a team. So I guess that was one of the main challenges.
Nice. And so do you work mostly in person, or most of your team usually virtual, except when you have a project? I'm just curious.
Well, thanks to Zoom and just the pandemic in general, making us better at using these platforms, we can plan most of the process at distance. So we're all working from home when we're planning, preparing the briefs or the estimates, all that part of the process. But once we're actually shooting, of course, we have to be there. We have to be there on the shoot. But we'll also, like, all our team building events will be in present, everybody in the room, because it's very important for us to get that connection built.
Right. Yeah. So basically picking your times to bring the team together, build a culture of collaboration and a family feeling, which goes a long way to delivering when you have to go hard on a project, right?
Yeah, I'll make the project 10 times easier and much more fun
More
for
fun,
everybody
yeah.
involved.
Yeah. So Nicola, I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want to, would you want to talk about a particular challenge and how you overcame it? Or if you'd like, I'm sure we'd also like to hear about a high point or achievement, or maybe they're related, overcoming a challenge, up to you. But challenge or opportunity that, recently, experienced and wanted to share.
I mean, I think my big business challenges are not dissimilar to Robyn and Louis. So, as a retail business, bringing in product is one of the most challenging things, and the space where you're going to spend the most amount of money, right? Money is coming and going in that space constantly. And so, like Robyn, sort of looking for all of the different avenues you can explore and experiment with for getting product into the store. Sometimes one supplier is going to be a more fiscally responsible choice. Sometimes there's a different supplier that you just really want to work with because your values align. And I think experimenting in that space has proven really useful to me in these first few months that we've been open. And then to Louis' point about staffing up, that was a really scary moment for me. My maybe 3 days, 4 days before we opened, I woke up in the middle of the night and realized, if something goes wrong in this first week we're open, it's just me. I don't have anyone else to rely on. What do I have to do if something goes wrong? If I have to run to the post office to collect something, who's there? And so while it wasn't really in my plans to hire immediately, it was the best decision I made. I think also because having a team there with you from the very beginning in the early days does build that culture. They contribute to it, and it's sort of growing outside of me, which is really, really wonderful. The sort of more voices you have participating in the business, the more well-rounded the business will be, I think. And the community, again, so much of what we do is rooted in community.
Right.
And then for me, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a high point.
Yeah, I think that for me, the high point has just been being there, being in the community, talking to other folks. So I sort of had this assumption that this thing I wanted, other people might want too, that this might be a gap for other folks. And in our first month being opened, every third customer thanked us for opening, which was not a sort of response that I was anticipating. And it made me a little emotional every single time. It still does. When somebody says, thank you for doing this, thank you for giving these publications the platform.
Oh, that's great. So satisfying.
Yeah.
Louis, what was your biggest learning from starting your own venture?
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. But I think the biggest learning was, again, going back to the black sheep thing that I mentioned earlier, is finding your special sauce and committing to it. What I mean by special sauce is finding your branding. What, if especially in the context of a business, it should be a little bit of an extension of yourself, at least how the values interact, how you present it. And for us, it was a long process. It did help that our Futurpreneur mentor, even before we started Futurpreneur, I met her on the podcast, and one thing she told me while we were interviewing with her was, you really want to find your own flavor, because if you don't, or if you try to blend everything together, you'll trying to please everyone will lead you to please absolutely no one. Kind of like, I like to use the example of vanilla, and I know some people really are probably passionate about vanilla, but most people like a specific flavor. They like chocolate, they like strawberry, and vanilla is a good complement to that. But very few people are passionate about vanilla to the point where it's like their favorite thing in the world. And that's kind of what happens a lot when if you don't find your special flavor, you end up with a vanilla product or vanilla brand, and people see it, then they won't necessarily, they'll see through it, and they'll see it's not you, it's not your own flavor. And sometimes it might take some time, and it's not something you should rush. But for us, it was instrumental, and it's what we did. We had a strong name. We felt we had we built the team, we built a common vision, but we didn't have that flavor set out very clearly. So we took some time last December. We sat down and we reflected on what made us who we were and what we wanted the brand to reflect. And that's when we decided we wanted to work with disruptors. We felt we were disruptors, or at least we wanted to be, and we wanted to work with people with that similar mindset. And so far it worked very well. And the best feeling is when you find out someone who reached out to you for a mandate that might have been unexpected or whatever, and you realize that person is really exactly that type of person, and he's a disruptor, and he or she is a disruptor and wants to put that forward too. So it just happens naturally once you really take in the time to think it over and put it in place. So finding your special sauce would be biggest thing.
Yeah, nobody gets passionate about vanilla. I like that. It feels like a t-shirt slogan. Although it's a good fallback. Like you said, it's a good complementary to the more ambitious flavors. Yeah, thanks for that. Really interesting learning. Robyn, I'm going to jump over to you. At BDC and certainly there's a number of organizations in Canada that focus on, in particular, serving women entrepreneurs, because sometimes women entrepreneurs have some particular challenges. My old employer, Scotiabank, also had a woman initiative. There's definitely some challenges and some unique ways of approaching things. So I'm going to ask you, Robyn, being a woman entrepreneur, is there if you had to share any sort of tidbits of advice or learnings with new and potential women entrepreneurs in our audience, what would some of your learnings be?
Well, naturally, I'm pretty quiet and I don't like to make waves, but what I learned was in my business vision, when I was consulting with different organizations, some of the opinions that I got or the feedback that I got didn't really jive with my vision. So I really had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet and, say yes when it was a yes and no when it was a no. And I think it really just applies to everyone, just being your business's best advocate and not being apologetic about it. I mean, it's your business and it's your baby. So you really just have to stand your ground. And that's the only way your vision's going to get, I forget the word right now, but
realized or whatever.
Yeah, it gets realized. So yeah, that's really my only advice. Just sticking to it.
Yeah, so be firm and trust your gut maybe, and don't. I think what I'm hearing from you is don't be intimidated by people who might be a little bit more pushy or a little bit louder about what they think your thing should be. Like, know when to stand your ground and don't be embarrassed to do that, right?
Exactly.
I'm going to just ask a quick follow on in your experience, and I don't know how you were fully, the whole story of how you were financed and everything, but when you think about other entrepreneurs that do you feel that being an entrepreneur, a woman entrepreneur, was there any challenges to getting financing or mentorship that in your experience, or was that pretty much okay?
I think that was pretty much okay, but I mean, I have to attribute all of that to my business plan, having a solid business plan and having a solid vision.
Yeah.
And really being able to answer all the questions that come and just being prepared for everything as much as possible.
Yeah, thanks. Nicola, I guess I'll ask you the same question. Any particular observations or learnings from your perspective in particular as a woman entrepreneur?
I think I didn't face any challenges in accessing financing as a woman, but writing the business plan was such a fascinating exercise as a woman. So much of that information is before the business exists, right? So much of it is based on assumptions, research that might not line up exactly as you want it, data that might not be as trustworthy as you want it. And I think as women, we've always had to be able to support our arguments maybe a bit more strongly than a well-dressed man in a boardroom might have to. And so I did catch myself often, trying to find the rationale for every little detail. And, my Futurpreneur business plan mentor said, well, no, but this, like, if you believe that, you can put it in. And so as much as that research and support is important, your own gut instinct and experience and assumptions are just as valuable. So I think to Robyn's point about just sort of standing your ground and saying the thing that in your gut is just as valuable. I think as women, we sometimes second guess ourselves more than we need to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I kind of hate, and I'm sure we all hate generalities and generalizations because everyone's different. But yeah, that when you read about it, you do see that women are more cautious. Certainly in the investment world, where I spent a lot of my career, women are more cautious and risk-averse investors, and in many situations, it actually makes them better. But obviously everybody learns from each other. So it depends. It depends who you are and how much you realize that. And then whether you're a man or a woman, you sort of recognize your own tendencies, and also to be less forceful or in your views, or less confident in no, I know this to be true. And I don't have to necessarily give 20 reasons why. It's okay if I can give one or two.
Yeah.
I can have the confidence to do that. So that's interesting. Okay, we're going to turn it over to questions in a couple of minutes, but I'm also curious. So Louis, you know, was there any particular advice that you got or that you would want to share, or that you learned yourself, that's really important for entrepreneurs that are thinking about starting their own businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing that really stuck with me the most, and I don't think it's even an entrepreneur who told me, so that applies to a lot of things in your life outside of entrepreneurship as well, but it's full accountability. And when I say full
Hmm.
accountability, I mean like really 100%. So it kind of comes in the same vein, the same idea of if you really believe you're in charge of your own destiny, uh, when something happens, you always have to go back to this mindset of there's in some way, shape, or form. Of course, there's some exceptions where it's very hard, but sometimes it's when you think of it the hardest that you can find some incredible pieces of information about yourself, how you could have approached a situation better. But in every situation, there was a little percentage, no matter how little it was, where you had the control over what happened, where you could have improved a little bit. And I think especially when you start having a team under you, working with you, it becomes even more important, because it becomes very easy when you're not alone to try to blame others, or a lot of people get involved in many decisions, and you're no longer just alone running the business. You're a team. You're taking decisions together. But if you're the entrepreneur behind the business, you have to put yourself in their shoes, and just make sure you understand there's always a little part of the situation you were responsible for. You did hire them, you did choose them for specific competencies, and it can be frustrating, but it's so helpful. It's very much helpful. I'm not saying there's not exceptions,
Yeah.
but like, even if it's raining outside and you're wet, you could have brought like an umbrella in the car
Mm-hmm.
as backup. You can't control the fact it's raining. You can definitely control how it's going to go after. So very important.
Love that. And I actually agree with you. That is a lesson for life that some people don't learn until way past when they should have learned it. I have hammered this stuff into my kids ever since they were little. And you're right. You can't control, as I say, shit happens. It's what you do when it happens that you have power over. And whether you have a little or a lot of power depends on the situation. But it's actually should be very empowering and emboldening for all of us to recognize that stuff happens every day that you didn't expect. Or again, to your point, sometimes you have to think, oh, next time I got to do a better job at making sure it doesn't happen in the first place, because maybe I do have some control. But even if you have no control, like the rain, you have control in how you respond to it. Hugely important for as a human, but I can see it being massively important when you're running a company. So yeah, thanks for that. And I'm going to tell my kids that an entrepreneur said the same thing, so that they don't roll their eyes when I tell them next time.
You can quote me.
Yeah, I'll tell them to call you. Yeah, so I want to hear advice from others, but actually I did have one other thing, and because we have a couple of more minutes, I wanted to hear quickly from, so I'm jumping around a little bit, what are the future plans for your business? So maybe Louis, I'll ask you that, and then I'm going to go around to the other two as well.
So the future plans for us are basically aiming at, well, we already did it a little bit and we already started, but it's finding those niche technologies and great opportunities that meet, I guess, this trifecta of being new and being innovative, adding value to our clients, and also having some kind of barrier to entry. Not necessarily that we want to block out everyone, but we're happy to find new opportunities that do require work. An example quickly of that is we've developed an offer of service that's like in the drone world. So we offer more and more drone videos. Drones have been around for a while, but specifically FPV drones, who FPV stands for first person view, are much more rapid, much more dynamic drones, and that you can actually bring inside. So we have, I guess we could call them competitors outside in the US who already aggressively use it and build their businesses only around that, and don't necessarily have other expertise in marketing and like actual video production like we do. So we really want to add that and be a game changer. So I guess it's also a lesson for others who are listening, is try to find that trifecta, and if you can also try to, if it really is that opportunity, don't let yourselves focus too much on, oh, I have all these projects going on. Those are opportunity costs. If that's really what you think, you feel is gonna be bringing your business to the next level, aim for that and put most of your efforts in it. Don't give up on something you really believe in, but don't be afraid to commit. So yeah, that would be these new technologies that we're aiming for.
Robyn, so maybe we'll start with what's next for your business and then end with a piece of advice for others.
Okay, basically what's happening with my business is I, over the past 6 months, learned about different behaviors and habits. So, and then the need. I'm learning that I might change my business model to a social enterprise, just because I'm finding that there's more of a need for this type of recreational activity, and the families that don't have access to it really need access to it. So we're looking at changing the structure a little bit for next year, having more of a social impact. So that's what's next for Taant.
Cool.
And advice, my only advice is just learn how to separate your business from your personal life. And really,
I'm sure there's a story
it's really
there.
hard. But learning how to really take special care of your mental health and your physical health, because you're the only one that's going to take care of your business the way that you do. It's your baby. So just really taking care of yourself so you can stay
your
healthy.
oxygen mask on, your own oxygen mask before you put it on your business.
Exactly.
Your baby. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that you said that, Robyn. I've been in talking to other entrepreneurs, or I've had a couple like young entrepreneurial spirited folks who are like, is it really a grind? And I was like, I set out to start my business with the intention of not letting it be that kind of like founder mindset of having to work 24 hours a day and constantly be stressed out about it. And it doesn't have to be that. So yeah, it's hard.
Absolutely.
Don't get me wrong. Boundaries are tricky.
They are tricky, but so important. And actually working for employers over a long time, I've learned that I can establish those boundaries in my own business better than I had been able to when I was an employee. So yeah.
Accountability. So you're accountable for, if you're working too hard, it's you've basically got no one to blame but yourself and your incredibly excited customers, but still. Nicola, so it sounds like you're on side with some of what's been said. Anything to add well, actually, what's next for your business, and then anything to add in terms of advice?
I think that I don't know what's next for our business. I'm in a really interesting place right now. So my business is quite young. We accessed our funding from Futurpreneur and BDC just in April of this year and opened in July. But we're in a really interesting moment where we've exceeded my expectations of opening and my goals for the remainder of this year, which means we have to pick the next thing now. Like, what is my next offering? What is the next thing I put my energy into? And and I have a whole lot of dreams, but I haven't figured out exactly what makes the most sense, where our biggest opportunity is yet. For the folks who are probably curious what those things are, you know, Issues is a magazine retailer. That's amazing. Will we start making magazines out of a workshop ourselves? Maybe. Will we start consulting on other people's magazine projects? Maybe. Will we start an event series? Maybe. Will we start a curated subscription service? I don't know what the next thing is yet. And I think my sort of piece of advice is probably in line with that. And to Robyn's point about setting boundaries is about you don't have to do everything all at once. And so sort of picking an aspect of your business to focus on for a bit of time can be so helpful. Like, you don't need to feel like you need to do everything immediately. One step at a time is enough.
Amazing. I think we're ready to go to Q&A. Thank you for that. So, wow, so many great insights. We've got about 15 or 20 minutes to go to some Q&A. I know there was some stuff that popped up in the chat, and then I also see some stuff in the Q&A. So I'm looking for, well, you know what, I'll just basically jump around, but interesting question here about, you know, social responsibility and the way you operate as a responsible small business. Do you apply corporate responsibility yourself, like, to the way you operate? And some of you have touched on this. Louis, I would be interested in hearing this from you maybe a little bit. Or do you feel that you get you do it in response to requests from your funders, like whether it's Futurpreneur or BDC or any other funders? Or is it something that you've built in, like your own corporate responsibility strategy and plans?
How would we define corporate responsibility? Like,
yeah, good question. I mean, I'm going to just interpret it as, you know, social, like how you treat your employees, and you did talk about this a bit, your employees, your customers, the extent to which you if you're buying equipment and your supply chain, you're making sure that it's, you know, it's not made with small children in a Bangladesh factory, and, you know, stuff like that, or made by, not made with. So that kind of thing. Environmental, like, you know, you have some standards or some things that you do on the environmental front. Like, is that, I mean, you guys are really small and it's early days, but it's an interesting question. Like, do you think about that?
Well, having the podcast, which you touched on a bit earlier, which is dedicated to like young entrepreneurs, specifically here in Quebec. I guess you could bring that to Canada as well. We make often constant choices to buy local, to support the entrepreneurs who come on the show, who support us, who are often our collaborators, our clients. So it makes, for us, it's very important to try to make that effort and not necessarily look at the price tag, because it's very easy to see a product that maybe, like for example, you mentioned, it wasn't made in a child labor factory, and obviously it's going to be much pricier here if it's done the right way with actual working conditions. But yeah, that would be our main thing, where I can honestly say we make a very important and conscious effort to source.
Good. And I mean, Robyn, you talked about it a little bit. I mean, we were talking about the UK, so it's not like they have children working in factories, but it sounds like you thought about that a bit. But did you want to add anything in terms of your approach to being responsible in your own business?
Well, just supporting other local companies is really important to me. A huge focus of mine is supporting economic development in rural areas. So important. Tourism, supporting locals in tourism, supporting your colleagues. And just really, if you have a niche, you just need to stick with it and not wear so many hats, right? So
Yeah.
if somebody is looking for something that you don't provide, you can refer them to your colleagues,
Mhm.
you know? So
Yep,
just making
fair.
sure that you're collaborating with other locals.
And good karma.
That's how yeah. So, and just sourcing your gear, making sure that it's coming from an ethical place. If you can buy something that is upcycled, then do that. If you
Right.
can find, you know, the gear from a local company and they're looking into where the materials are being sourced, you don't have to, right?
Yeah.
So, and they give you all the information on it. So when your customer does ask, you have all the information
Yeah.
and you have the knowledge.
Here's an interesting question from the chat. Tell us a bit about how you deal with marketing. So the person in the chat asked a really good question. It's like, how can I find an affordable marketing expert as a new company without financing yet? I keep finding marketing companies with no success stories or proof of performance. So basically, how do you do marketing on a shoestring budget? Well, Louis has some video marketing tools for you, but
Yeah, I think Nicola also answered in the chat with a very
oh,
a good response with
great.
having the brick and mortar shop. So maybe if you want to talk about that too.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. I didn't see the response yet. Good.
Sorry, that was just to one particular person. So
That's a good question. Others may want to hear too, though. And if they aren't following the chat, maybe you can talk about it a little.
So a piece of advice that I got from an entrepreneurial friend of mine when I was starting this business and writing my business plan, you know, something that my Futurpreneur mentor kept asking was, are you sure bricks and mortar makes sense? Are you sure bricks and mortar makes sense? The overhead of a bricks and mortar store is astronomically more than the overhead of an e-commerce business. And when I started asking a few pals who had both sides of their business, one of the incredible pieces of advice I got was that nobody just stumbles on your e-commerce business the way they stumble on your bricks and mortar business. And that was really interesting. So by prioritizing location when you are actually building a physical business, you build in marketing, right? You build in people coming past you. And so I think that's really interesting. The foot traffic is so valuable, and hopefully the experience for folks is a good one and they continue coming back. Social media helps, of course, as folks visit issues. They post to social because we're active on social. And then they, of course, inspire their followings to come and visit. The publications themselves do some marketing for us. And, you know, so far, all of this is free with the exception of my very expensive downtown Toronto commercial lease. But our suppliers do some marketing for us as well. They list us as a Canadian stockist on their website. So folks looking to access those publications know that they can come to us, and they also share that on social. We tag them, we connect them to our customers, those kinds of things. And social media is the bane of my existence, but also a really, really valuable tool. And it is where folks are going to access information. And are looking for purchasing inspiration these days. That's where they stumble on services and goods for sure. And then my own position within a community or with your customers is also like a pretty free marketing tool. So, you know, because I exist in the community that our customers come from, my profile helps market our business.
Right. Robyn, oh, sorry, Nicola, you were cutting out a bit. Were you done? Okay.
Yeah.
Robyn, you have a very different kind of business. You don't have a storefront. How about you? Any insights to share on marketing? How do you do your marketing?
Collaborate with other businesses. If you're just establishing, collaborate, make friends with everyone, and really try to just collaborate. That's the only way your name is going to get out there if you don't have one already.
Do you do any formal marketing, Robyn?
I do, because that is one of my weaknesses. So collaborating, finding people that you can trust to work with. I
Great.
think that's the biggest one. But yeah, just meeting people and getting out there is a huge help for marketing. Doing these events, going to conferences, it's not always cheap to do that, but if you can find some way to do it, or just, go to the local meetups, but make friends with everyone and really try to collaborate online as well. That would be my advice.
Thanks.
That's how I got started.
Yeah. And Louis, did you want to wrap up with anything on the marketing front? Because you sort of handed the mic over to Nicola, but I was just curious, like, do you guys do formal marketing and advertising, or?
Yeah, I was gonna add to Nicola's point. I think the actual brick and mortar experience is very important, at least for us, because we don't have walk-ins, but we make it a very important part of our process to bring people in and they get to experience it. And that's where a big part of the difference between just shooting on your phone and doing something nice and like really having a full-on experience and creatively, connecting with your customer is very important. And also we do a lot of we do social media because we don't have a choice. The podcast helps a lot to bring people in, either through just social media, people getting to know us. The people who come in to be interviewed as well are a big opportunity, and that doesn't cost much. And that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, because in 2020, when I hadn't started the business for that long, but most of my networking came from events. And if we remember that year, all events got shut down like one day to the next, and we had to improvise and keep building. So we said, okay, we'll bring them one at a time to come to the studio with a good reason, because of the podcast. But really, we made them go through an experience that created connections, and a lot of our clients are now people who came through the podcast or interacted in a way or another with us through that. And of course, LinkedIn, I think, is like a huge opportunity to meet basically anyone you want anywhere in the world. And it doesn't cost you anything to just write a message. Just take the time to write a note and make sure you're very clear about what you want to do with that person and why they should listen to you, and take the time to interact.
Great tips here. So that's great. I think we've covered some really good advice on different ways of doing marketing, from with little to small or modest budgets. How about business incorporation? There's a question about your recommendation on getting your business organized legally. So this question from Tyler asks, says, is there a better way than going to a law firm and paying fairly large amount of money? Online resources, platforms, anything you can suggest. Again, I don't know how each of your businesses is incorporated, but certainly it's an interesting and very practical consideration for any entrepreneur. Robyn, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, usually your local university will have a faculty of law, and usually they'll run legal clinics for you. So you'll be partnered with somebody that's going to be a lawyer but knows all the law and can usually help you and be quite resourceful in starting a business.
Great, thank you.
I would just check out the local universities and see if they're offering legal clinics. Even incubators will offer legal clinics and help you find the resources that you need to start your business or incorporate it.
Okay, great. Do the others have anything to add to that, Louis?
Yeah, I went through, there's a lot of services now that are popping up where they specifically build legal services around startups or for startups. So here in Quebec, there's LexStart we went through, and it probably cost us, I think, maybe $600-700 to just do the whole incorporation process, and they did really well despite the low cost. And I think they even partnered up with the National Bank here. So maybe costs $1,000, but they give you $300 if you open an account with national banks. So there's a few programs, and Canada Wide is another company called Good Lawyer who basically do the same thing. So at very low cost, you can get that done quite easily.
Amazing.
And-
And Nicola, anything to add or any other resources?
Yeah, we Issues operated as a sole proprietorship as I was getting it up and running. And then we engaged a lawyer, not a law firm, an individual lawyer who runs their own practice focused on small business law. And, you know, that is also a route to look for, because then you're not paying the entire team necessarily. And the one benefit of working directly with a law center or a lawyer, I think, over some of those online resources is someone like me who does not know how to translate legal speak at all. They can translate that for you. So that was really important for me when working with a lawyer. Like, can you distill this into 2 sentences I can understand, please? Can you tell me these options in layman's terms, please? And so that was really helpful. And actually, for me, the cost of it is comparable to what Louis spent doing it through one of the online platforms.
Okay, good, great. So those are some really great options for people to explore. We're getting close to time, but this is kind of a fascinating one, and maybe a little bit related to the conversation about make sure to take care of yourself. You know, first and foremost, and don't burn yourself out on your business. But the question here is, how do you split your week on average between different tasks? I mean, I guess I'll leave it to each of you to sort of create the buckets, but if you had to describe how you split your week between 3 or 4 different things, what would that look like? Maybe I'll start with, maybe Nicola, do you want to start?
I'm an interesting case because I
Okay.
do a billion things. And I will say that in the early days of running this business, of Issue's existence, I am a ping pong ball ricocheting from one task to the next. I am in the process of trying to organize myself more thoroughly. And for me, that is very much about time blocking properly. Like, I am spending these 2 days focused on this task. I am spending this morning focused on administration, and actually ignoring some of those things until that point. Time chunking things together, like paying all your bills in one go, sucks, but it's definitely efficient to do it all at once. And I think I have a staff as well. So I have 2 part-time employees who work in the shop, and have delegated a lot of tasks to them. So, you know, they handle a good chunk of some of those silly things, or ongoing things. They post to social media every day. They answer our general email inbox, and that helps free me up to focus on some of the bigger tasks.
Amazing. Thank you. Louis?
Yeah, I think Nicola has great advice I should probably take, because I'm very bad. That's probably my biggest weakness.
I'm bad at it right now too. Don't worry.
All right, it makes me feel better. But yeah, I think the time blocking is very essential, and yeah, she mentioned also delegating, which is very important, and making sure if you don't go crazy with too many tasks, because you'll do half, you know, you don't do them right, it's not worth even attempting. So getting support and not being afraid to ask for a hand is very important. So that could be through hiring or just delegating certain tasks.
Just sort of an add-on to that, would you say that how much time do you spend on your business? Like, is this a 40-hour work week? Is it a 60-hour work week? Is it hard to tell because it's so blended into your personal time? I guess before we wrap it up with Robyn, I guess this is really for all of you. Yes, all of the above, depends on the week. I don't know.
For me, it's very blurry. It's
Yeah.
definitely not 40 hours, that's for sure. But I think I've only been full time since I think the month of April or May. So I
Okay.
feel like I need to put in those hours right now to get it at least started to where I want to be.
Right.
But yeah, it's more like at least 60, 70. But I really, when you're an entrepreneur, you don't really count the hours, and you usually
Yeah.
really love what you do. I know it's not like a healthy response to that question, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. Robyn, I guess same thing. How much time do you spend in your business, but also how do you spend your time? How do you manage your time?
Well, I think that the way I manage my time is on my website, I put my hours. So
Nice.
Mornings are pretty tough for me. What I do in the morning is I usually get up and answer a bunch of emails, and then I'm offline and from probably 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. And then I'm working probably 11 to 5.
Yeah.
And then, working, I jump off for a while, and then I jump on again around 7 and answer all my emails. But I don't know.
It's just all blended
I try to be responsive with inquiries. When people have questions, I always want to be responsive and not wait too long to answer a question. You know what I mean? So yeah, this summer was different because it's peak season. I was on the road a lot. I was in my car a lot. So I was putting it around 12 to 14-hour days, but that's just the nature of the business, right? I'm taking a lot more time for myself right now, with it being a shoulder season. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Nicola. Yeah.
I think that it's, like Louis, it's blurry. It's hard to know. And I also like to think about it as like really active work hours and inactive work hours. Like as an entrepreneur, you often spend a lot of time just mulling things over, thinking about things, talking things through with, mentors, colleagues who are also friends. So the sort of idea of it being work doesn't feel the same. And I think that helps being able to find joy in some of the things that might be considered work. Is helpful. Yeah.
I think that's a good note to end on. Being able to find joy in things that might be considered work by some people. Maybe that's what entrepreneurship is all about. Thank you so much. I'm going to wrap it there. That was great. I learned so much. I had a million other questions in my head, but we're out of time. I'm going to turn it back over to Karen Greve Young, CEO of Futurpreneur, for some closing remarks.
Hey, thank you, Sandra. Thank you all so much. Louis, Nicola, Robyn, I'm feeling super inspired. It was really fun seeing the chat, I have to say. And I think you inspired some people of all ages actually to make the leap. As I put in the chat, and I know some people are watching and listening and some people are reading, if you feel inspired and you are under 40, please do visit www.futurpreneur.ca. On the top navigation, you can look up financing and mentoring, and then you can see the option that is most appropriate for you. Our services do end at 40, or joint services for this program with BDC. If you are over 40, fantastic, please start a business. You can work with another partner. Again, if you're still start stage, other partners might get you to BDC, but Community Future is your local small business center, definitely worth reaching out to. What an amazing conversation. And I feel like I had a question I was going to ask Sandra at the beginning, and we ran out of time then, but it feels like the perfect time after that conversation to ask you, Sandra, for your perspective on having just heard that. What impresses and inspires you the most about the next generation of young entrepreneurs in Canada?
Thank you for that. Well, this was so interesting to me, and everything impresses me about the drive and determination. But I'm going to say, I love the way that this next generation of entrepreneurs feels that it's perfectly natural to embed purpose into their companies. I mean, they want to scale, they want to create and scale a profitable company for sure, because you can't deliver impact if you go bankrupt. But they are also thinking about the tangible impact on community, on their supply chain, on creating a culture in their own companies that inspires people to be happy to work there, you know, taking care of themselves.
Yes.
I really, I don't know if that was just kind of table stakes when when we were well under 40, Karen. I'm just going to say that, but I'm just thinking that this generation really is, you know, they really want to develop, they really want to have businesses that also have this well-rounded community and in some cases environmental benefit. And among this group, I mean, I just loved the creative mindset, the enthusiasm, the determination, and the innovative spirit. So I found this super inspiring. So thank you very much for all your comments, panelists. It was great to listen to and learn from.
It really was. And I want to particularly thank you. I often think of time as being entrepreneurs' most valuable non-renewable resource. And you just gave us an hour and a half, and we really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who gave your time to join us today. It's the questions were provocative and really helped the conversation get going. And thank you, Sandra. Final last word. It really has been such a great partnership that Futurpreneur and BDC have. And when we hear stories like these and the other 1,000 a year stories of entrepreneurs launching with our support, we are excited and inspired for the future of Canada. So huge thanks to everyone. Hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and a fantastic weekend. And we will see you at our entrepreneurial events in the future. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Karen.
Take care.
Bye. Have a good weekend,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.